Hey y'all, and welcome back to a new video of a game that I played a couple hours ago where I basically got into a worse position out of the opening after being 3 pawns for a piece down. So let's get into it. I start off with d4. My opponent goes knight f6, bishop g5. I've played this opening a million times. It's probably on the channel a bunch. The Champowski attack. There's lots of ideas here. We're just going to look at the line that my opponent played, which is the move d5. And here what you do, you go bishop f6. It depends how they take on. They can take with the g pawn or the e pawn. Both are very natural. He decides to go with the e pawn. And now what you do, you try to give black an isolated queen's pawn on d5 and pressure that for the rest of the game. So e3, bishop d6. We go c4. And we try to basically induce the move c6 so then we can go takes. And this is what happened. This is what a lot of these positions end up coming to, where you get these positions where they have a bad pawn in the center, and you just pressure that with like knight f3, queen b3, and g2 and bishop g2, g3 and bishop g2. Right. So that all very natural stuff. I go knight c3, and my opponent goes bishop e6, and a queen b3, and I'm already doing quite well. I got pressure here. I got pressure here. I can't really take this pawn yet with my knight because then my queen is pinned. I cannot draw arrows today, but I can't really take that with my knight because then my queen is pinned, and we get into some dicey stuff over here. Like, here's a nice way to lose. Let's say they go b6. Obviously, this would be bad. Let's say takes bishop d5 here. He gets this check. He gets the queen, and I lose the game. So we're not going to do that. My opponent decides to go knight d7 in order to defend the pawn. I can't take this pawn because this is kind of death. Like, losing this pawn looks very bad for me. Like, at the very least, he has a draw with rook a8, I thought. But actually, computer gives castles, and black is better. Well, like, almost better. I would say black is better here because my queen is a little stuck. But anyway, that's a moot point because I don't take the pawn. I go g3, and I stick with my idea of playing bishop g2 and putting more pressure. My opponent goes castles. Bishop g2, attacking the pawn. My opponent decides to play this weird move f5, which I didn't really understand. I guess the idea is that he wants to go knight f6 and defend the pawn like that. And I got a little freaked out here. Like, I started, like, really panicking for some reason. I was like, I don't want to take this pawn. I don't want to take this pawn because then I lose my good light squared bishop, my good Fianchetto bishop. I don't know why I do that, and I really like my bishop, and I just got into like this like headspace of like, oh, my bishop is so good. So instead of doing that, I just developed my knight to e2, and I'm arguing, okay, I'm gonna go knight f4. I'm gonna come in here. Maybe I'll take with the pawn with the knight, and then like come here. And I thought, okay, well, at the very least, I'm gonna probably win the pawn in the future. Pawn's not going anywhere for now. Knight f6. I castle my king. Okay, now there's no more like weird bishop checks here. That's important. My opponent goes a6. Okay, kind of a weird move. I probably should be taking on b7. I probably should take on b7, but instead I decide to take on d5, which is completely fine, except for what my opponent does. My opponent goes knight e4. Okay, interesting move. He's cutting off connection between my bishop and my knight. Very reasonable. I take, which I thought was natural. I'm just getting rid of it, and I don't think that there's not going to be too many light squared weaknesses around my king, so I thought this was fine. And I make a terrible move here. What I should do, I should capture on b7. This looks kind of absurd, but like I thought like rook b8, and I thought I was like losing here after like this and like rook here, but actually I just take the rook in that case. And honestly, my opponent can just make a draw. I don't want to draw. I hate playing draws, so I'm just not going to go for that. That's not a line I'd ever go for. The other line is this move a4, which is insane, just stopping b5. But instead I go knight ec3, and I'm actually just losing. I'm actually just losing. There's nothing I can do here already. I'm already in a terrible position. My opponent goes b5. He's starting b4, and there's nothing I can do. I try to unpin myself, but then my opponent just goes b4, and I have to sack the piece. So I go for the most material as I can. I take on b5, on b4, bishop takes, and I take this pawn. And what the position that we get is I have a position where my opponent has the bishop pair. I have 3 pawns for one of the bishops, and I'm probably worse, but it's still a little complicated. I have a 2-on-1 on the queen side, and I got some pawns here that could be good in the future, right? So this position could arrange in some interesting ways. My opponent goes rook e8. Perfect move. He's threatening this or this. He's threatening milling stuff. I move my queen back. I'm not dealing with all that. That sounds terrible. My opponent decides to go bishop h3. Okay. Like I said, there's not going to be too many light squared weaknesses around my king because the queen is going to have a hard time getting in there. I think for a while, and I play this move rook e1, rook f e1. A little bit of a toss-up to where I should put the rook on like c1 here or here. But I decided to go to e1 because I want to play e4 in the future, and I want to like stop any like weird way from like get his queen into like a mating position here. So my opponent goes queen f6, right? He's trying to go queen f3. We're not going to allow that. We go e4. This is my whole idea. Now queen f3 is death because he just simply loses the queen. And this position is already kind of going out of control because my pawns have started moving and they're going to keep moving. They're not going to stop moving. My opponent goes rook a8. Okay, reasonable. I'm just going to defend my pawn rook a1. This made a lot of sense. Computer, the low-level computer that did the game review of this game says this is the best move, but at depth 20 Stockfish says it goes down by minus a point, which is pretty funny. But I thought this was very natural, rook a1. I'm just bringing my other rook to the center, and I want to push these pawns, and I might have like a chance of winning at some point. What I should do is go e5 with this pawn, but at the very least, I thought like this move. I guess not actually. No. Yeah, that never works. For some reason, I thought this worked, and yeah, but I just take first and like here, and I'm winning. Okay, that was a terrible miscalculation on my part, but for some reason I thought that was a thing that could happen. I'm completely wrong, but here I go rook a1. My opponent drops his bishop back to g4, and I move my rook up to d2, and I'm like, okay, my rooks are very strong. I'm defending my second rank, I'm defending my first rank, everything is defending, and I'm probably going to be able to push in the future. He's never really going to take my knight because his bishop pair is very strong, and he doesn't want to do that. I never thought that like this would be a good move. Like, yeah, it's not. It's a terrible move. And I'm like, okay, I can probably at least make a draw here, or I can even play for the win, which is interesting. My opponent goes bishop c5. I can't take because the queen hangs. That's a little thing. Just don't blunder that. But instead, I just go e4 and d4, d5. Oh my gosh, because this pawn is not hanging, and I think that's what he missed. Because now my pawns start moving, and this pawn is already 3 squares away from queening and could be a big issue for him in the future. So he has to watch out. My opponent decides to go here. Okay, it's obvious what he wants. He wants to go here and like maybe put the pawn on h3, right? And he's trying to mate me. That's like the whole thing. I don't blame him. I'm very handsome, but he's trying to mate me. So I decided to go a3. First of all, I don't really care. Computer says h4, but I thought that this was like bad after like g5 at some point, and like he's just like attacking me. Like this seems a little rough. Like he goes king h1, he goes here, and like he attacks me. I don't know about that, so I didn't go for that. Instead, I allowed the move h4, which he played pretty quickly, and I'm like, okay, well, I take the pawn, and my king's actually not that weak. I go queen here, and he doesn't have any mating attacks. First of all, he doesn't have any mating attacks, and what I'm going to do, if he trades queens with me, I thought that, okay, well, this seems pretty good. I got these 2 pawns that are pretty strong. My pawns are completely stopping his dark squared bishop. His light squared bishop doesn't really have any targets, and I thought that I would be doing well. But like well, I'm always like worse here, but like it's complicated. Like here something, and I don't know, king g2. Like the position can get out like pretty quickly. And my opponent decides to drop back to h5. He doesn't want a queen trade. Reasonable. I mean, his thing is he wants to mate me, so he doesn't want to trade queens. I thought this was very natural. I go with this move rook d3, which I thought was very, very creative. The idea of rook d3 is in preparation for his next move, and it is one of the top engine moves. Rook d3 kind of stops this move bishop d6 because now I want to play this move f4. And the reason why I couldn't do this earlier Like if I play anything, I don't know what would be a nonsense move here. Um, this move. This is obviously a bad move, but like this move, and I don't think I can play f4 because I thought that he could like get in with this bishop c5 and like try to like bludgeon me over here. And that looks really rough, and that's why rook d3 is important. So that's why I played rook d3 to stop any bishop f3 stuff in the future. I go f4, and my opponent missed this. I'm sure he missed this. He actually texted me during the game. He's like, "Oh, f4 is a very interesting idea," and I'm like, "Oh, you probably missed it, huh? Yeah, you probably missed it." And he immediately blunders with the move g5, and now I'm back in the game. I'm back in the game, and I quickly play the best move. It's a very easy move. It's h3, right? And now his bishop's hanging, the pawn is hanging, and I'm back in the game. It's not as horrible as Stockfish says, but I'm still worse. Don't get me wrong, but it is a blunder, and I now have some winning chances. My opponent drops back his bishop. I decided to take this pawn because I didn't really see what else I would do. Actually, e5 makes a lot more sense. I kind of didn't understand. I didn't realize that the like pawn was pinned to the king, so I was like, oh well, he takes here, and then I don't know what I'm doing. That looks a little rough. He takes here, and they take the pawn. I don't know why I would do that. So instead, just queen g5. If I played e5, I would probably be winning this game a lot easier. But instead, queen g5 takes, and I'm actually up a point of material, but it's still minus 2 for black because his bishop pair is very strong, and my king is actually kind of weak. Very interesting position. My opponent gives me this check, I think, for a while, and I play this move king h2. Actually, like the worst square my king could go to, which is pretty funny. Like every other square is better. G2, F1, H1. H2 is the worst square my king could go to, but I thought H2 made some sense because that pawn is now being defended, and I want to get like some rooks on the G file in the future. Opponent goes with this move there. The idea being he wants to bring his bishop over here, and he wants to like makes problems with my rook, so I can't go like rook f1 or something, because then he has the skewer. And I think for a while I played this move rook f3. I just kind of want to get rooks into the game because they're not in the game just yet, and I want to like, I don't know, maybe something like this in the future, maybe like rook f6, maybe something like that. I don't know. It's all speculative at this point. My opponent goes here. Don't really know what that does, so I advance in the center. Okay, great. I'm pushing my pawns. I've got pawns that are connected 2 squares away from queening. I've got another pawn that's 3 squares away from queening, and I might go G6 at some point. Try to break open everything. I might have rook f6, trying to get some stuff happening over there. It's a very interesting, it's a very fascinating position, and it gets rough real quick. My opponent plays rook b8, and I'm finally back into the plus territory. It's plus 0.2 now. Plus 0.2 after a crazy move that I would never have seen in a million years, and I don't see it. It's plus 0.2 after knight e4, sacking this pawn, because actually after king g3, I'm just better. I just argue I'm better here. Like, this looks insane. But I have like serious targets over here, like bishop e7. I go d6 here, and I go d7. My pawn's 1 square away from queening. It gets intense. This is all the engine line. I didn't see any of this, but I had no idea why I would lose the pawn for free, so I decided to play this move knight a4. Instead, hit the bishop, defend the pawn. So that was very natural. My opponent goes back to f8. He didn't really see a better square for the bishop. Bishop d4 here is very interesting. The idea, like after a move like rook f6, trying to like get everything here. Bishop b5 takes. This is like a very common plan. Like I'm just down in exchange here, and actually I'm losing here. Very interesting, but I have to keep everything on the board. My opponent doesn't go for that. He goes bishop f8, and I go with this move in the position. Go e6. I'm like, okay, I'm getting my pieces in. He goes bishop d6 check. Okay, king g1. Very simple. No more checks. Doesn't have this check because the knight defends, and this pawn is no longer being attacked with a check. My opponent takes. I come here with the rook. I have a minute left on the clock. It's getting dicey. the idea is obviously you can't take, because then I would take the rook first with check, and then I would take the bishop, and I'm probably just better because I'm up a million pawns. Opponent goes here, and he blunders. He blunders the move rook e3. But I still go here. This is also a fine move. Rook e3, and I'm better. Rook e3 here. Rook e takes e6. Rook e6 here, and like he has to like find some line to survive. I can go rook g6 first here, like bishop a4, and we get some interesting lines where my pawns are like about to promote, and he's gonna try and like save the game. And the computer thinks it's a draw, but this is very, very tricky. Instead, I just take out the pawn. I'm attacking the bishop. He trades, and goes with this move. I saw this move, and I didn't think it was that bad because I had this move rook e3, which is wrong. I have to go knight b6 here, hitting the bishop, defending the pawn, and coming in between the... I did not see that. That's a little crazy. I didn't see that at all, but like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, yeah. I didn't see that move. I just missed it. I had a minute on the clock. My opponent also had a minute on the clock. He spent a lot of time on his last couple of moves, by the way. And here I go rook e3, attacking the bishop. He drops back the bishop, and I'm like, okay, rook c3. I'm skewering the bishops. I have some play. I'm probably like winning here after like bishop b5 takes. I'm probably like even better here because I get this d6 pawn that's like marching forward, and it looks really, really scary, right? Yeah, that's terrifying. And I'm like, okay. And my opponent decides here to completely miss that move, and instead just takes the pawn because he thought he was losing. So I take the bishop, comes here, I come back, threaten a rook trade, comes up, I hit the bishop, I win the pawn, and I push. And now the position is very easy. We go on for like 20 more moves. I'm gonna speed run through the next couple moves. These were all played with like 30 seconds on the clock for each player. So we're kind of pre-moving at this point. I have a fork. I trade off the bishop. I'm able to push some pawns, and my opponent like loses his rook for some reason, which is weird. And then I just make another rook because I don't want to like stalemate him at any point. Come here, and then I just decide, instead of any funny business, I'm just gonna mate him. And this game was very good because I played well. Like out of the opening, I felt I played very, very well. Played at 85% accuracy, and if we like discharge like the weird like blunder like here, then I think I played this game pretty well. I kind of saved the game in my opinion. So I think I did very well, and that shows that I'm probably gonna get to 2200 soon. I hopefully will hit master eventually. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this instructive, entertaining, all the above. If you guys did, remember to like, subscribe, do all the normal things that YouTubers tell you to do, and yeah, good evening and good night.